Every night, the house settled into a profound silence. The old floorboards ceased their creaking, the wind whispered only faintly through the eaves, and the city outside became a distant, muffled hum. This was the hour when Anna found a fragile peace, a brief reprieve from the anxieties of her day. She would often read or simply stare into the darkness, embracing the quiet. But then, as if an unseen hand consulted a cosmic clock, a change would occur. Precisely at 2:13 a.m., a faint flicker, a spectral glow, would emanate from the living room. It was the television, an ancient, bulky cathode ray tube set that had been in the family for decades. It wasn't plugged in. It hadn't been plugged in for years. A relic of a bygone era, now just a piece of furniture collecting dust. Yet it pulsed with a faint internal light, a soft, almost imperceptible hum that resonated not through the air, but directly into the core of her being. At first, she dismissed it. A trick of the light, perhaps? A dream. But the occurrences grew more frequent, more undeniable. The screen, instead of the familiar, comforting white noise of static, presented something far more disturbing. It was a shifting, swirling vortex of gray and black pixels, constantly reforming, constantly morphing. Within this chaotic distortion, shapes began to coalesce. Not random patterns, but distinct forms, faces. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, each one unique, each one trapped within the digital snow. They were ephemeral, like ghosts caught in a blizzard, their features indistinct, their expressions a blur of fear and longing. They were there, undeniably there, staring out from the glass, directly at her. She would stand in the doorway, paralyzed, a strange mix of terror and morbid fascination gripping her. The faces just stared. Their eyes, or where their eyes should be, seemed to bore into her, a silent, desperate plea. They were voiceless, their mouths opening and closing in an endless, agonizing pantomime. A silent scream, a soundless cry for help. Night after night, the ritual repeated. The time, always 2:13 a.m. The faces, always there. She tried to record it once, holding her phone up, but the screen only showed her own reflection, a terrified girl staring back from the dark glass of the phone. The faces were for her eyes only, a private, terrifying broadcast. Over weeks, the faces grew clearer. Their features sharpened, the lines of their anguish more pronounced. She began to notice details, a shock of dark hair, a hollow cheek, an eye wide with unspoken horror. They were more human now, less like digital phantoms, more like people struggling against an invisible barrier. And then they began to mouth words. Still no sound, only the silent articulation of syllables, a grotesque ballet of lips and tongues. She watched, transfixed, trying to decipher the silent language, her mind racing, desperate for an explanation, terrified of what she might find. The silence was deafening, amplifying the unsettling sight. Every night she felt a pull, a strange compulsion to understand. Her sleep became fractured, haunted by distorted visages and unheard whispers. She started to draw them, sketching the vague outlines, trying to capture the elusive despair in their eyes. One night, a particular face, older, with deep-set eyes and a sorrowful frown, seemed to focus its entire being on her. Its mouth moved, slowly, deliberately, forming words she could almost grasp. She watched, her breath hitched, her heart a drum against her ribs. And then, with a jolt that sent a tremor through her entire body, she understood. The mouth formed 3 distinct words, clear as day, even without sound. Her blood ran cold. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down on her. The simple, chilling demand echoed in her mind, a silent scream that tore through the quiet of the night. She stumbled back, hitting the wall, her eyes wide with unadulterated fear. The faces on the screen, as if their message had been delivered, began to fade. The distortion swirled, consuming them, until the screen went entirely dark. The faint hum ceased. The old television was once again just a dormant object, unplugged, lifeless. But something had changed. The silence that followed was not the same comforting quiet as before. It was heavy, expectant, filled with an ominous promise. The faces were gone from the television. She checked for days, weeks even. The screen remained stubbornly black, a dark mirror reflecting only her own increasingly anxious visage. She began to think she had imagined it all, a product of sleep deprivation, a stressed mind playing tricks. She tried to convince herself it was over, that the torment had ended. But the relief was fleeting, a thin veneer over a growing dread. Because the faces had simply found new canvases. They began to appear reflected on windows, on the polished surfaces of her wooden furniture, on the smooth, cold steel of her refrigerator door. They were always just at the periphery of her vision, a fleeting glimpse, a sudden, horrifying apparition that vanished when she turned to face it directly. At first, they were faint, almost transparent, like water stains or smudges on the glass. But each night they grew clearer, more defined, more human-looking. They weren't just reflections, they were entities, spectral beings peering through the thin veil of reality. Their eyes held a chilling intelligence, their expressions no longer just despair, but a hungry, knowing anticipation. They were closer now, not trapped within a screen, but surrounding her, watching her every move from the reflective surfaces of her own home. The house, once her sanctuary, transformed into a labyrinth of watchful eyes. Her sleep became impossible. Every mirror, every window, every shiny surface became a potential portal for their gaze. She covered the mirrors, drew the blinds, anything to escape their silent observation. But they persisted, appearing on the screen of her phone when she tried to ignore them, on the glossy cover of a magazine, even in the polished surface of her teacup. They were invading her world, piece by piece, reflection by reflection. One evening, as dusk settled, casting long, eerie shadows across her living room, she walked past the large antique mirror that hung in the hallway. It was uncovered, a small act of defiance in her increasingly paranoid existence. She glanced casually at it, expecting to see her own tired reflection. But the face staring back wasn't hers, not entirely. It was her face, yes, but twisted into a wide, impossibly sinister smile. Her own lips, but curved into a rictus of triumphant malevolence. Her own eyes, but devoid of warmth, gleaming with an alien joy. She wasn't smiling. She hadn't smiled genuinely in weeks. And then, from the depths of the mirror, from the reflection that was her but was not her, a whisper finally broke the silence. A sound, faint but clear, resonating with an unholy glee, a chilling triumph that settled deep into her bones. "You let us in."